Today, we're going to be putting every common from Twilight of the Republic into a tier list for your pre-release, sealed, and draft. Dudeness, why don't you start us off by talking about the tiers?
Yep, hello. So we start off with the top tier. These are the best. These are the cards you're more than happy to run as many copies as you can get. Below that is the good tier. These are obviously the good cards, but you're probably not going to run as many copies as you get. There'll be an upper limit. Filler, these cards are exactly that. Filler, if you need them to fill in your curve, to fill in a particular role for your deck, slot them in, don't be afraid. The fringe cards are exactly that. Fringe, if you have the synergies to support them, fine, but otherwise you want to avoid them if you can. And then last, and in this case, most certainly least, we have the never tier. These are the cards you want to avoid altogether. Just don't put them in your deck and you will be better off for it.
All right, they're on the screen now, and we're going to move to our first fringe card, 41st Elite Corps. This card has a 3/3 for 3, which is a little bit below curve, but with that coordinate, so if you have 2 more units on the field, it does get the 3 health, can trade off with some token units.
Yep, next is the Padawan Starfighter. I think having to control a force unit is too restrictive, and I'm not looking to play this card.
Next up is Infantry of the 212th. Needing to coordinate with the 2 other units and only getting Sentinel isn't a big enough payoff.
And then next up again, Grievous. This card just doesn't spark joy. 3 damage from your unit isn't enough.
And after that, we've got Guarding the Way. This gives one of your units Sentinel, but in order to get some of the bigger benefit, you do need to have the initiative, which is too situational to make it reliable.
Yep, and then after that, we have Encouraging Leadership. Again, unless you have a very go-wide deck, this seems too conditional to get a good payoff for.
We've got the Series Officer. He can come out on turn 1, but he's a pretty weak unit as a 2/1. It is going to guarantee to get 2 damage on your base, but it won't affect the board state that much.
After that, we've got the Soldier of the 501st. Again, a 1/3 stat line is just too weak IMO to really use this card unless you really need the Republic.
And after that, we've got a Clone Heavy Gunner. Its body, when you play it by itself, is pretty weak as a 1/3. If you have some friends, it can be okay, but then they can control which unit they take out, turning off the coordinate.
And then we've got the Vanguard Droid Bomber. I don't like 2-drops that you don't want to be playing on turn 2, so look elsewhere.
And after that, we've got the Droid Cohort. The benefit of getting a 1/1 stat buff and a Droid token is fine, not great, and so not really worth playing.
In Pursuit, again, if you have a bunch of extra droids lying around, it could be okay-ish, but I'm looking to avoid it.
Dwarf Spider Droid seems like a trap card. Obviously, Grit can scale highly. It's got the 4 health, but for 4 cost, you could be doing better things.
Republic Commando, a 2/5 stat line isn't exactly the greatest, and only getting Saboteur when you activate Coordinate isn't exactly a spark joy.
Hailfire Tank is a pretty big card, 7/6 for 8. With Exploit 2, could be out a little bit cheaper, but we're going to see that there are better cards that you're going to want to exploit out. And so that's what leaves this one a little bit less for wear.
And the ETA-2 Light Interceptor, 5 cost 3/4 in space, just does not spark joy even with Restore 2.
And the Headhunter Squadron is a 1/4. You're going to play it on turn 1, and in space, it's not really going to take anything out, most things out, and it's going to be defeated in a few attacks anyway, so it's not really going to do anything.
And then we've got our first reprint of the set, the Volunteer Soldier. This is a pseudo 2-drop that you cannot actually play on turn 1, so I'm out.
Now we're going to head up to the filler tier. And our first card in the filler tier here is the Wartime Trade Official. This card, you're going to play it turn 1. You're going to try to trade it off. If your opponent dodges and goes space, it's really going to put it at a big disadvantage.
Next up is the fan favorite Droidica Security. It's solid enough, and if you need some Sentinels, put it in your deck, but I don't think it's super amazing.
It definitely needs shield. And after that, we've got Outspoken Representative. This card, just to note, does get Sentinel if you control another Republic. So it's not a card that requires Coordinate. You're going to play it turn 1. Again, you're going to hopefully get a Republic out after that to give it Sentinel, so they have to attack it. When defeated, it creates a Clone Trooper token. So if you're going with some clone troopers, you're going to need them. This card could be decent.
After that is the Knight of the Republic. He's a big stat line for 4/7, but he doesn't do anything immediately when he enters the field. So he's a little bit slow. But if you can get some value, obviously clone trooper tokens are pretty good.
After that, we've got the Boy, the Royal Guard Attaché. This card enters play effectively as a 2/3, but with leaders like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you'll be able to heal that damage off, and he can get his full potential as a 2/5. So that's why it's in filler.
Yeah, that card becomes good in the Obi-Wan deck. Next up is the Trade Federation Shuttle. The 2/3 stat line is weak for 3, but being able to trade a Battle Droid token makes it okay-ish. That's why it lands in the filler tier.
Pretty good play after a Royal Guard attaché. And after that, we've got a multi-troop transport. This card will be able to make out a lot of tokens for you. So if you can exploit it out, get it out a little early so you can make more of those tokens, then it could be something worth looking at.
All right, and then after that, we've got the Falchion Ion Tank, 4/6 Sentinel. It's good enough. The 6 health is pretty nice. It's a good filler card, but I don't know if I'm running more than 2 copies of it in my deck.
And we've also got the Separatist Super Tank here. This is going to be a pretty big cost card, but that Exploit 3 is going to help you get out a little quicker. But an 8/8 stat line is pretty big and going to definitely be something your opponent's going to have to try to use a lot of resources to get rid of.
The 501st Liberator, 3/3 for 3. If you have the Republic, you can heal. It's okay. Like I said, definitely no more than 2 copies in your deck.
Subjugating Starfighters next. Having an ambush on a vehicle, on a space unit, could be pretty strong. Being able to hopefully take out their turn 1 play ship with staying alive can make it good, but it does die to some of the other space units, which does lower its value. Hopefully you have initiative when you're playing it, or you're going to try to play it with initiative so you can get that extra value with the droid token.
The B1 attack platform, well, a cool card. 5/2 is vulnerable to a turn 1 unit if you play it on turn 2, but it can trade up well if you can have the opportunity. So, it's fine.
And next up, we got Dendup's Loyalist. That's going to be a basic card you're going to play on turn 1 as a 2/3 Overwhelm. It's pretty basic card, but it's going to do enough.
That card definitely goes up in an Anakin Skywalker deck for sure. After that, we have the Bold Recon Commando. 3/4 Saboteur for 3 is just solid stats all the way around, and this card's just fine.
And after that, we've got a Reckless Torrent. What gives this card value is the fact that you are able to ping something in your opponent's ground arena. You do need to first deal 2 damage to something in your ground arena, but being able to ping something off, whether it be another space unit that will take this unit out, or a unit in the ground, gives it more play.
After that, we've got Grim Resolve. The card is a nice finisher. It is a bit situational, and in my mind, it's borderline fringe because it has to be a non-leader unit too. But it can certainly be a nice surprise finisher if your opponent isn't expecting it.
And next up, we've got a Wolfpack Escort. 1 cost 2/1 in space. This can be alright if you're trying to go aggro in space. Gets a early unit out. It also has some play with a favorable delegate, being able to trigger that when played without losing the when defeated. So if you want to replay another when played effect, that could be helpful.
The Republic Attack Pod, 6 cost 6/7. Vanilla is, it's reasonable. And if you can pay 5 for this, which you can on a lot of leader deploy turns, you can activate the 3 more units with this. It's pretty solid.
Next up, we've got Clone Dive Trooper, another 1 cost unit to go with the Wolfpack Escort. It's 2/1. Its coordinate probably won't do much to it, especially with only 1 health. But it's an early unit that you might be able to snowball.
And after that, we've got the Tri-Droid Suppressor. Might seem good at first, but it's a little bit slow. You have to play this at first to get the win played effectively. So in my mind, it's even borderline fringe.
Up next, we've got Political Pressure. Where this card in limited especially can be really good is the fact that your opponent's only going to have 1 to 5 really good cards. And so if that's in their hand, they're going to probably want to protect that, allowing you to get the two battle droid tokens.
After that, we've got more vanilla boys. We've got the Super Battle Droid 3/4/3. Hey, if you need that to fill your curve, throw it in. It's fine.
Up next, we have Merciless Contest. Like a Power of the Dark Side, but a little bit different. This, you both have to sacrifice a unit. So the nice thing is if you don't have a unit and they do, it still works. But the fact that it does have the cost where it is also going to hit your unit, you're going to have to wait for the right time to use it.
After that, the Phase 2 Clone Trooper. Should note this card is probably bumps up to good in a Palpatine deck because he can activate the heroic unit dying easily. But other than that, 3/2 ambush for 3 is just, it's fine.
And after that, we've got an armored saber tank, very similar to the Ion tank earlier. This is just going to be able to be put out and protect your line while also dealing damage to their line.
We've got the heroes on both sides. If you can get the both Republic and Separatist unit +2/+2 buff on this, it's pretty okay, but definitely a little situational.
A thing to note about the card is the traits are both Republic and Separatist, so you can, with Dooku, make it cheaper by 2, negating the aspect cost, and searching out with Padme. And after that, we've got Drop In. It's going to be able to give you your 2 clone troopers. So if you need that for your deck, that could be helpful. It makes fair stat line 4/4 worth of units across 2 bodies. But do you want a ton of it? Probably not.
And then last in the filler tier, we've got the Holdout Blaster. They can ping off another droid token, give your leader a little bit more extra attack. It's fine. It's good.
And now we're getting to the kind of good cards. You should be happy to find. And we're going to start off with a Devastating Gunship. It's a big thing in space, but the big part about it is when you play it, you can defeat a unit. So you can set up their unit to have not a lot of health, play this, and take it out. Now you've also got a big space body.
And then we've got the Daughter of Dathomir. I like the 3/5 body. And the Restore 2 is nice in all the blue decks because you're probably going a little bit later game, helping you stay in the race a little bit.
We've got next Advanced Recon Commando, 3/4/4/3, kind of like Echo-based Defender, but instead of Sentinel, has Overwhelm. In a set where we're going to have a bunch of 2/2 clones and 1/1 droids, that Overwhelm is going to help you defeat their unit plus deal some damage to their base.
Exactly. And then we've got one of my favorite cards is the Pelta Supply Frigate. The Coordinate of being able to create a clone trooper token isn't that hard to activate. Being 5 cost is the same as a lot of the leaders. So your leader can help activate the Coordinate. I like being able to spread threats into both arenas. There's not a lot of cards, if any, that really do that. So definitely pick these up if you see them.
And this card does count itself for that Coordinate. So like a Rex deploy into this gives you everything you need right away. And up next, we've got a Coruscant Guard. 3/2 body for 2 is pretty on par there normally, but then if you have Coordinate, it does get ambushed to get you some damage in early. So if you have an early game, it's good. If you have a late game, it can be good as well for Coordinate.
Yep, solid card. After that, we've got the Ryloth Militia, 2/3 with raid 1 for 2, pseudo 3/3, right? And if you're going first, it trades into all their other 2/3, so a pretty solid card overall.
Next up, we've got a Republic Arc 170 vanilla unit, a 3/4 for 3 in space, especially in this set, is going to be pretty strong, stopping it from being defeated by a lot of the other early game ships, so you can be the aggressor in space.
We've got another Sentinel in the B2 Legionnaires. This time it's a 5/4 Sentinel with Overwhelm for 5. It's not as good as the Patrol AAT, but it having Overwhelm is pretty nice. And so, yeah, definitely a good card for sure.
And after that, we've got a Bactoid Spider Droid. This card is border tier top if you have the units to defeat with Exploit. If anything beyond like a 6 for a 5/6 ambush can be pretty strong. Having ambush in the game is just really good. There's a reason ECL is one of the best played bases.
And then we've got another reprint, resupply. Hey, ramping is pretty much always good, but you're not going to run infinite copies of it, so that's why it kind of slots into the good tier here.
And after that, we've got another reprint, Take Captive. In this set especially, there's not as much countering to taking something captive, and so this card will see a little bit more value in this one than in Shadows. But being able to take out anything of any cost in the same arena, your droid token can capture their 9-cost unit, and that could be annoying for them, especially if it's a Sentinel.
Next up is a space unit, the Squadron of Vultures. 6 cost 5/4 with Exploit 3. I think this card is good even if you just play it for 4. Exploiting any one token to get out of 5/4 in space for 4 is pretty solid, so definitely pick them up.
After that, we got a Senatorial Corvette. This is a card that I would have one of in my deck pretty highly, maybe 2 of in my deck. We don't have it in top tier because we wouldn't want a ton of them. But a 5/4 for 5 ship is pretty strong and a lot of damage, put pressure on them. As well, there's also a mini discouraging of them defeating it, because then they will have to discard a card. So it does have a little bit of protection there. Definitely a strong card, but a card you might not want a ton of.
After that, we've got the Relentless Rocket Droid. 4 cost 3/5. If you control a trooper, which in this set is really easy, he's basically 4 cost 5/5, which is really strong with really relevant traits. So, like, this guy I probably have 3 copies of, 4 copies, I'll be pushing it, but, I might.
And just a reminder that clone and droid tokens are both troopers, so that's why they're easy to get.
Yep.
After that, we got the Heavy Persuader tank. That's a 7-cost unit, but it can exploit down to a 3-cost unit. When it enters play, you're going to ping a ground unit, and it does come with a 6/5 body, so you're getting a pretty fair costed card. Even at 5, it's pretty fair costed, and it also has a 1 plate effect, so pretty strong card there.
Yeah, I'm okay playing that card for 7 most of the time. So then now we got another reprint. Daring Raid. It's 2 damage. It's great. You'll take several copies of it for sure. Just another great choice for a reprint IMO.
Next up, we've got Infiltrating Demolisher. This it has exploit, but even without the exploit, it's still a 4/5 for 4 with Saboteur. So on stat line, it's pretty decent. It's got a ability, and then it can also come out cheaper as well. So you could be playing this on turn 2 potentially, maybe even something else. 4/5 body at that cost is pretty reasonable.
And then we've got on the doorstep, just being able to create 3 battle droids readied to then immediately be exploited potentially is just great value. You love to see it.
After that, we have some creative thinking. This card, just as a base value of costing 2 to create a clone trooper token, is basically on value with what Breaking In provides. Half the cost and half the effect. This one does have another effect, though, which is exhaust a non-unique unit. In Constructed, this won't be as good, but in Limited, a reminder, you get 9 common cards, and so most of your opponent's deck is going to be commons of some kind, and all the token units are common units as well. So you'll be able to do that tapping effect really good in any kind of limited sealed draft format.
After that is the B1 security team. The only thing keeping this card from top is the fact that it only has 1 HP, and in a set with a lot of droids, that's not as good, but it's still pretty solid. I'd consider running 4 copies of this, honestly. So it's borderline top for sure.
Up next, we've got a Favorable Delegate. This is a turn 1 play, which is going to give you some immediate value of drawing a card. You will have to discard one of the cards. It doesn't have to be that card that you drew when he is defeated. 2 interesting ways around that. As mentioned earlier, the Wolfpack Escort would bounce that to his hand, so he wouldn't be defeated, and therefore you just got a free card. And if he is defeated when you have no cards in your hand, you also don't have to discard. So you can definitely use those advantages to hopefully get a free card draw.
After that, we have the Hot Shot V-Wing. And for those paying attention, that is yellow. Just had 3 good neutral 2-drops in a row. Yellow is a very solid color for the early game. But this guy, again, this is solid 2/3 stat line at space. There are no 3 attack units your opponent can play on turn 1, so he is safe. Yeah, it's great. I'd run 3 or 4 copies of him for sure.
We've got next up a Freelance Assassin. This card costs 3, but you can also pay, if you do have the resources, pay the extra 2 when it comes in to deal 2 damage to a unit. So as a 5-cost unit, it's a 4/2 that enters play and deals 2 damage. Similar to the red card we mentioned earlier that when it enters play deals 2 damage. But this, it gives you the option to choose. So if you want, you can just play it for 3, and it still has 4 attack, which is a good number.
Yeah, it's important to note on that unit that it can be any arena, not just the ground arena. All right, next up, we've got the Hidden Sharpshooter, just a 4/3 ambush for 4. The only thing that keeps it from top is that we basically get the same effect for 3 and another card coming up.
And after that, we've got Breaking In. This is going to be like Surprise Strike with 1 less damage that it can deal, but it also is going to give you Saboteur to get around maybe pesky Sentinels, which there were a few Sentinel big kind of ships that people might playing. So if you want to end it off, you can do that. There's no shields in this set for that part to matter.
Yeah, and that's funny because the next card we have is the Patrolling AAT, which is one of those big Sentinels we were just talking about. And this card is for sure a 4/5 Sentinel. Is just really, really solid that you're okay playing pretty much all the time.
And huge value if you're playing Dooku, where you can get this out for 3 by sacrificing a droid token.
Yes, and in fact, there's a really nice play with the Confederate Courier. On turn 2, you can sack it, get the droid token. Now you have a Sentinel protecting the droid token you just got. So pretty cool little line there.
Or if you play on turn 1, the next card here, Droid Deployment, which is going to create 2 of those battle droid tokens, and then next turn, sacrificing 1 with Dooku to play that Patrolling AT-AT. Getting 2 units is really nice. You get that 2/2 value of body stats for 2 resources, having them in 2 bodies, especially with Exploit in a set. Even in Coordinate as well, if you have some non-aligned cards that have Coordinate, will also benefit from those 2 droid tokens.
And then the last card we have on the good is the Phase 1 Clone Trooper. It's just a really solid 2-drop you're happy running multiple copies of. Now, I would say this card is like borderline filler, right? It's like filler plus to good. But, I mean, 3/2 for 2 in this set is pretty all right.
Especially if you're running a new Palpatine. If you want Chancellor Palpatine, if you want to get a heroism unit defeated, this is going to be your best first option. And now we're on to our top tier. These are cards that if you have 5 of them in a pack, which a reminder, in limited, you're opening 6, in sealed in particular, opening 6 packs. And if you open 6 of any of these cards, 7, however many of these cards you open, you can include them all in your deck. Same in a draft, you can draft any number of these cards. We say draft them all, take them all, have no fear. You can play them. They'll play them and they're good. We'll start off with this Perilous Position. This is our first kind of upgrade, which is going to give -2, or any kind of negative buff in that way. Also, when played, it will tap them down. So it's going to slow them down and it's going to make them weaker. Very good card.
It's important to note that card can also be attached to leaders. So just really versatile and can act as tempo as well as removal. Pretty cool. Next up, we've got Vanquish. Got the reprint from set 1. In this set with a lot of exploit units that people can be potentially exploiting out. There could be a lot of top targets for this Vanquish. This feels like pick one. If you're in the blue colors and want to stay open, you can just grab this and just see how it goes. The Republic Tactical Officer, the ability to push any other Republic unit, give it +2 to trade up or even just go face is just incredible in draft and sealed where you're looking to value trade as much as you can. The 1/4 body actually in this set is super relevant because there's so many droid tokens floating around for him to just smash over and over. So really solid unit that I would run 6 copies of in my deck easily.
In a pre-release where you can play Ahsoka, if you have one other unit, you have Ahsoka on the field, and then you play this, it gives it the coordinate and then the extra, and it's a 7 damage attack. After that, we've got a Confederate Courier. This is a 2-cost unit, so we're going to play it turn 1. Another one of those when defeated plays. As we mentioned earlier, any of those when defeated plays are great with exploit. If you do exploit with it, it's now creating that token out on the field. So you're going to get another unit to exploit in the future, more value in the body. Its stats are a little bit weak, so it's got to be a little bit careful on how it drives, but it can also take out some space units as well. So that could be very helpful.
I think another theme to these top tier cards is that these are all probably going to find their way into Premier as well. And that's 100% for sure going to be with this next card, Droid Commando. It's conditional 4/3 ambush, but it only costs 3, and it's not that hard to activate another Separatist unit. And just a 4/3 ambush for 3 is just absurd. And just the value there is just incredible if you can pull it off. So,
and just a reminder for people that there are going to be non-aligned, so not heroism, villainy, Separatist cards. So make sure you're looking at those. Some of the Chancellors that you can see and other cards that are Separatist to make his ambush come off even more reliably.
We've got the Batch Brothers. These guys are, in my opinion, the best card to activate Coordinate. You're getting your 4/3 stats for 3, which is standard par, but you're being split into 2 bodies. So they're more resilient to removal. Except just pray they don't have Grenade Strike, but we're going to look past that. Just great for activating Coordinate, and definitely I would run as many copies as I had.
If your opponent is playing a Batch Brothers, then play a Grenade Strike, as mentioned by Dudeness, which is our next card. It's going to let you deal 2 damage to one unit, and then you may deal 1 to another unit in the same arena. That may is actually a really helpful thing, because you don't have to target your own unit at any point. With a bunch of clone and droid tokens in play, we're going to be wanting to have nice ways to deal multiple points of damage. So we're going to clear like a turn 1 if they play the droid deployment. We're going to be able to take both of them out. We get choice on how that's going to be divided. They do have to be in the same arena. Just be mindful of that. But it's going to let us clear hopefully 2 units with 1 card.
All right. So then after that, got the elite P-38 Starfighter. And this guy has a very cool when played and when defeated of being able to ping any unit in either arena, which is super huge. And the ability also synergizes really well with a Jango Fett leader, if you happen to be playing that. Just overall solid card that has a really cool when played, when defeated, and the when defeated actually allows him to trade up a lot of the times too. His 3 attack is essentially 4 attack if he has to attack into something in Kamikaze.
And our final common card we're going to talk about is the Geonosis Patrol Fighter. This card has 5 as its cost, and you may be playing it for 5. It has that exploit too, so you could bring it down to a 1-cost card It's when played effect, you return a non-leader unit that costs 3 to its owner's hand, which is great because tokens cost 0, meaning that you can bounce a token. In Dudeness, what happens if a token gets returned to a player's hand?
It is discarded forever. From play, it's gone. It's never coming back.
Yes. And
It's in this case, it is effective removal, which I think is going to be one of the best cases for this patrol fighter is bouncing your opponent's clone or droid tokens.
but then it also can target any unit that costs under 3. So even on turn 2, there's a potential for, if you play, again, we talked about that droid deployment or any other kind of card that maybe when defeated will bring a droid token into play. You can play this on turn 2 and bounce their turn 1 play. Plus, you have another droid left around, and you have this 3/2 space. If you need to, that's something you can do. And now we want to transition to quickly talk about uncommon cards in the set. So on the screen now, I've got the Vigilance uncommon cards, both for villainy, heroism, and regular vigilance. The single vigilance and the double vigilance card. Dudeness, do any of these cards spark joy for you?
All of the villainy cards are pretty okay, honestly. The Rune is okay as a 2-drop with conditional stuff later. I would say the best of these is the Calculating Magna Guard.
Yeah, I like Magna Guard.
I don't like Captain Typho, but Hello There is a really solid card. Aether Sprite, Obi-Wan's Aether Sprite is probably the best of the heroism side for sure. Just take over space by himself.
Unshakable Will has some potential if you need a Sentinel. I don't know if I love it though. The Disruptive Burst in a format with a bunch of tokens, you do get to give -1/-1 to each of your opponent's units. So either they have only 1 life left, or if it will prevent you from taking a lot of damage back. It also wipes out though any droid, which is nice. One thing to note is, well, you always get at least 9 commons in a pack. That's why we kind of did a tier list for all the commons. With the uncommons, you're guaranteed at least 2. Most packs will have 3, so you're getting less of them, and so they're not going to affect your deck in the same way that all the commons will. That's why we're just going to briefly go over them all. And we'll now turn to the command uncommons. Dudeness, which stands out for you?
For villainy, Admiral Trench. That dude is fantastic. If you can get the exploit when played valued with this guy, it's going to be through the roof. Also, Kraken is just really solid as well. He's probably the best token generator in the whole set. Maybe second best after Pogger the Greater. Just really great, and his when played, making all your tokens relevant is super good as well. For the heroism, the 2 ones you should look at are Echo and Shock T. Both of these are great cards to pick up early. Echo is probably one of the best, if not the best, coordinate card, actually. And Shock T's ability to make your token unit stronger and create the Clone Trooper tokens is just super great value.
In the center there, I have Clone Commander Cody, and I like that because I think it works on both the villainy and the heroism side. You've got all the droid tokens that you can make and the clone tokens you can make. Getting that coordinate off to even the droid token situation, you're basically doubling their attack and their defense. And for the clones, that overwhelm is going to be really nice, making them at least a 3/3. He as well has overwhelm himself, so I think he's something that I'm really looking at. I also don't hate the squad support myself. In certain decks where you are pumping out a bunch of tokens, looking at you, Newt Gunray, you can give one of your other units a pretty big buff, which I think is pretty fun. What do we think in this one of Manufactured Soldiers? So that's our double green card. Is it good enough to push you into double green?
If you have 3+ copies of it, probably. It's going to be hard to pull off, though.
Up next, we have the Aggression trait. What stands out to you of the Aggression cards?
Okay, so for the villainy side, we've got Self-Destruct. I think is pretty solid. It's a great removal card. It can hit either arenas. You just have to defeat a friendly unit. That's most likely just going to be about a droid token you've got laying around. Savage Oppress can be a nice finisher if you're able to activate the when played and ready him up. 7/7's no joke. On the other side, 2 best ones here for sure are the low altitude gunship, being able to, again, pinging, finishing off things to prevent your opponent from getting the value from that unit is huge and limited. So this card is just exactly what you're trying to do. And Overwhelm is just a nice little bonus. Anakin's Interceptor after that. Good, solid space unit with very cool traits. Bold Resistance is a nice little finisher, though, too, because it can be any trait. Doesn't have to be doesn't have to be Republic or whatever, even though it's in a heroism deck. So it's most likely going to be Republic, but it can be Separatist if you happen to have some droids and another Separatist unit out. I think that card is actually pretty solid.
Some warning with Jesse: when you play him, you give your opponent 2 battle droid tokens. As we talked about earlier, with your opponent maybe having exploit cards, you could really give them an advantage to ramp out something much bigger because you give them the tokens. Cards that stand out for me, though: Bloodsport in a set with a bunch of clone and droid tokens, being able to wipe them all out, all the ground units out, which all these tokens are in. One thing to note, it does affect both sides, so you will be hurting your own units as well. Another thing with Heavy is a 4/4/4/4/4, but with Coordinate does give him a little bit more with a Raid 2, and when defeated does deal a damage to each of your opponent's ground units. So if they're running a kind of a Separatist or a villainy deck with the droid tokens, you can defeat them all. Dudeness, on the fact of double aspect cards, Twice the Pride. Do you think this card is worth running for the extra 2?
No. This card is not worth it to be sacrificing your deck for, I don't think.
Okay. And just so people know, this is a card you can play on an opponent's unit to deal it 2 damage. So
I do want to shout out Clone Cohort. I do think that card is pretty solid. And I love upgrades that can go on any unit, not a non-vehicle or whatever kind of unit.
And next up, we've got the Cunning aspect. Which one of these cards stands out for you?
All right, so I mean, first and foremost, soulless one. If you can have General Grievous as your leader, and you are looking to get this card as many as you can, because it's absolutely incredible with them. But outside of Grievous is pretty poop, right? It's no bueno. After that, though, I really like Zero the Hutt. The 2/8 butt is huge. It's really hard to deal with, and when played is pretty relevant, and the on attack is also pretty relevant. So like, just a really annoying and obnoxious unit to have to deal with. I think for the heroes, the very best clearing away is Plo Koon. This dude's going to see play in Premiere. You're going to be happy to have multiple copies of this in draft. If you see him, take him. He's fantastic. Again, he counts himself for the coordinate. So he just needs to be the 3rd unit on the field to ambush, and as a 6/6, fantastic. After that, the clear is R2-D2. This little guy, 2/4, hard to deal with on turn 1. Being able to ditch a card you don't want to get any other card you do want is fantastic. Love that card.
Another big ups for Plo Koon with Captain Rex, who comes in with that buddy, so that way you got the coordinate already down just in the one play. I want to highlight here Prisoner of War, another card that's going to capture something, where this card has a little bit downside as a capture. You, as always, you can't capture a leader, but you also can't capture a vehicle unit, effectively taking out the whole space arena from being captured. And there's also a decent amount of vehicles in this set on the ground as well. So you are not going to be able to target as many things as other cards that can capture. But if you do target something with less cost, you do put 2 battle droid tokens, which can maybe help you out with some kind of exploit thing later on. Also worth pointing out, on top of things, this is a card that I think Dudeness has come to really like. Being able to give your guy a little buff while also not being able to be attacked this phase can prevent it from hopefully being defeated, and using that extra damage, kind of reminiscent of Jetpack from set 2.
Yeah, because it's really great because you play an upgrade and then your opponent can just trade into it, and you're like, oh, well, that's not very fun. This prevents one of the direct downsides of playing upgrades while also pushing through damage. So yeah, I'm really high on this card.
One word answer: Double Cunning. Worth it with the uncommon in this one?
If you live for the memes, yes.
That art is, I think, pretty top tier. And we're on our last set of uncommons here. We got our neutral / just heroism and villainy. Dudeness, what are we thinking about these?
Most of these they're kind of mid. The Battle Droid Legion, honestly, it's pretty mid. The 9 cost is really prohibitive. Like, unless you're doing the X-Blade 2, it's really not worth it. The ATTE can be a nice finisher if the game goes that long. It's like pretty solid actually, but the game needs to go that long for it to matter. And then Sword and Shield just feels too niche, too situational.
I'm a fan of Sword and Shield myself. Obviously, it is situational. With all your tokens being troopers, it does give them raid. 1 or 2 Jedi can be enough to give your guy Sentinel. One unfortunate thing is most Jedis are going to be in the uncommon or higher, so you might not get them reliably. Just a thing to note, there are some ships like Anakin's ship and the other Force
Obi-Wan's.
Obi-Wan's, sorry. Yeah, Obi-Wan ship.
Obi-Wan's and the Starfighter thing.
The 2-cost one. Those are all Jedi, so those would get Sentinel as well, giving you some Sentinel in space. As well, that private manufacturing, I've been a pretty big fan of it because of how easy it is to get any kind of token on the field, any kind of token unit on the field, especially the droid tokens. I find it pretty easy to get to just be a free draw 2 card for 2. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. This has been our ultimate tier list for your limited, whether that be your pre-release, sealed, or draft. Let us know in the comments what cards you disagree with, which cards you would place higher, and which cards you're going to be using at your pre-release. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Have a good day.
Yep, cheers, y'all.